So let's dive in. We hopefully can see that there's a lot of positivity around corporates in the audience today, which is great. So why is it you should go out and seek corporate funding? And it seems like I don't have to convince you much of this, but primarily, and the obvious reason is because there are companies out there that have budgets set aside for charitable giving. So if there's money there, we want to try and be finding ways to tap into it. But more than that, I think companies have a really big and diverse set of skills within house that you can try and tap into, expertise in certain areas which you can take advantage of, whether they be in life sciences or not, and resources and people often who can really support you in what you're doing too. And many of them want to use those skills, resources and expertise to support certain causes or certain organizations, and rare disease charities should try and make the most of that wherever they can. Why then do corporates want to give to charities? What is the motivation underlying that for them? They're really broad and diverse, but fundamentally, if we're being a little cynical, maybe companies need to worry about their image. That's crucial to everything they're doing. It's their brand, it's their identity, and the perception of brand is key. And in the bulk of cases, marketing is the department and area where people are going to focus on this. That's about how they're selling, what they're doing. But actually, their relationships, their engagements with other people and how they are perceived through those is also a key part of your perception of a company. And this falls into kind of broader buckets of something called corporate social responsibility. How are companies identified? What ideas and messages and themes and causes to identify with and try and support? And this can have a big impact on how we perceive companies and also how companies perceive themselves. And that's a really crucial point. Obviously, there are some tax benefits to giving donations as companies as well. It offsets some tax that they have to give. So there's a financial incentive for them to do it, which is never a bad thing. We want to tap into that. And that image point comes again. It's not only about your external image, but your internal image to your employees. And increasingly, people want to know that they're working for an organization that has an ethical basis and that's trying to have a positive impact on society. And that's where a lot of these CSR policies are really coming to the fore. And this is something we've seen growing a lot, I think, recently, and younger generations, whatever we're on now, the millennials and further back are increasingly worried about, Juliet's laughing at me, increasingly worried about making sure the work that they're doing has an impact and finding ways to put some of their time into social causes. So it's an area that's really growing and we should be mindful of. So when we get to recognize there's funding there, how is that funding accessed and what packages do we see it in? And that's three major buckets. I think corporate grants, corporate or event sponsorship, and then kind of active engagement with the companies themselves. If we just step through these a little bit, in corporate grants, they're pretty much always going to fall under a corporate social responsibility, a CSR bracket. They're thinking about giving out money to causes they support. It's generally going to be hands-off from the company. They're going to want to give out funding to things they've decided and let you get on with it as a general rule. And this is a particularly common approach for the pharmaceutical industry. And there's been a lot of partnerships we've had at Findacure that have gone down that road. The application processes can be really varied, and we'll talk some more about that shortly. But you need to look into what the process is like and get an idea of how it packages it. Generally, for the company, there's little benefit beyond that reputation or association with your organization. We're starting to see a few cases in the grant giving side of things where it's tying more to those overarching themes, causes that companies are trying to support. So they may be targeting their grants more to specific areas or specific issues they're affiliating themselves with. And that's worth bearing in mind and trying to find out what those are, because that will help you access those funds. Event sponsorship, it's probably leans more on the marketing side, but it can be seen as a blend of marketing and CSR, and certain companies will sponsor from a social responsibility angle as much as or more than from a marketing angle. But the general point is the company is more likely to be involved in the thing that they are sponsoring. They're going to have visibility there and want to engage with it in some way. Again, a very common approach for the pharmaceutical industry, but more widely, companies like to sponsor events to be visible. Similarly, very varied application processes between companies. And there really need to be and are clear benefits to the company of engaging in a sponsorship relationship. And we'll talk about that in more detail soon. Active engagement is pretty much a CSR project, but it's generally going to be targeting those internal staff members. It's going to be helping the company itself and the people who work within the company engage with causes and to recognize that societal impact or ethical basis for what they're doing. It's going to be hands-on, therefore. It's companies looking for a way to make an active difference. This is going to be less common in the bigger pharmaceutical companies generally, but quite prevalent in life sciences or consultancies or other companies that you'd work with. And it's less common in pharma because there are often worries and concerns within pharma companies about their staff members engaging directly or one-on-one with patients or having undue influence on patient groups. So bear that in mind. These projects can take a huge range of forms as well. So it may include some financial benefits. It could be volunteer time or pro bono support from the company. They may go off and run some community fundraising events for you. So Phil, I've lost my Zoom window. I don't know if you could just pop up a quick poll about the types of engagement people have had with funding so far on the corporate side.
Yeah, I'll just launch that now.
Thank you, Phil. So just out of interest, it'd be really good to get a little look and see what you guys have been done so far on the corporate space along these kind of 3 buckets. So look and see if anyone's applied for a grant or secured grants, whether you've got pro bono supports, community fundraising through the corporates you're working with, or just really not done it so far. Okay, ticking through so far, I've got about a third of you responded. Quite a lot are not engaged with corporates at all. A lot of sponsorship as well. Looking good. Give me a couple more seconds. There we go. That's great, guys. Thank you very much. Okay, 80% voted. Very nice. I'll end the polling there and I'll share the results. So what we can see is sponsorship is a route a lot more people have been engaging with. A lot of people have sought sponsorship. About a quarter of you haven't engaged with corporates at all yet, so there is a real potential there down the line, but a real spread of ways that people are engaging, which is good to see. And 25% of people there have received grant funding. I'm hoping that's 5 of the 6 who applied that have been successful, which is a nice thing to see. But Charity of the Year schemes as well engaged. So thanks for that. It's really good to see. Okay. So we've got an idea of what type of funding is out there, and you guys are beginning to access it. So how do we go about identifying potential supporters? That's kind of the next thing to question. There is no single answer to this. There's a whole range of different approaches you can use, and what I'm putting here is just an overview and some ideas to help. Firstly, with everything, you want to make use of your personal connections, and ideally the connections of people within your community of your beneficiaries. If you have a partner who works for a company, can you get them involved? If one of your beneficiaries is heavily involved in a big international bank and they've got some money available, you want to find out and see if they can find a way in. Use your connections to open doors for you and to get that chance to have a conversation with the company and tell them about the story that you're looking for them to support. On a similar basis, you can really look at local companies and think about trying to identify local business networks or networking events where you can begin to meet and talk to people from different companies and share your stories and ideas with them, because that could open new opportunities for you and make the connections you might need to begin to open doors in the corporate world. If you're looking at event sponsorship, I think something we all always try and do is look at existing event sponsors. So look for similar events to yours and see what companies are reaching out and engaging with those things. You might look at some of the Findacure events. You might have a look and peep at things like the World Orphan Drug Congress or other healthcare related sponsorship events. There may be certain larger charities in a similar area to you, disease area, that have sponsorship, and those companies could be potentially opportunities for you to look at. And obviously, it's always worth looking for companies that are interested in your specific rare condition, because when they are interested in that, many companies want to work with and provide financial support to patient organizations. But don't just look at those that look interested in your disease, look at connected diseases or affiliated diseases as well. It's important to explore other life science companies. Don't just look at pharmaceuticals. Think about healthcare consultancies, biotechs. We've had a lot of joy working with different groups like that at Findacure. They can be really valuable because many of them want to engage more in an active way, and that can access you time and expertise as well as simply funding. And think beyond life sciences as well. Banks, law firms, retailers, all of these have CSR schemes that you can access and really benefit you. Do your research. Try and use websites to explore issues that matter to the companies. And that's something Charlene's going to talk about a lot more. But if you can tap into a cause that company is trying to support and drive forward, that's going to help you stand out from the crowd of people that are applying to them. And make sure you attend events with companies where you can. That might be those local networkings I've mentioned, or it could be some of the larger, more national, international conferences in life sciences or rare diseases, just to put yourself in a room with them. And again, allow yourself to kind of tie into this golden rule. Never underestimate the value of personal connection for an approach. If you're sending out a cold approach to a company, there's a very good chance it's going to get ignored and lost in their email inbox. But if they know your name, if they've talked to you before, if you have someone who's already bought in a little bit to what you're doing, it's far more likely to have that bit of success. And to do that, you have to be out there and meeting people. Okay, we're going to dive through the 3 classes now and look at them in a little bit more detail, and I'm going to try and pick the pace up a little bit. Grants are hopefully more familiar to everybody, and in the corporate grant world, it's a lot of the kind of principles we've already discussed are going to apply. The applications themselves are going to fall into 2 major buckets. There's going to be a very structured approaches, and there's going to be more direct approaches where you're engaging with an individual. In the structured approaches, you're going to have a web form, very much like you might have for a trust or foundation that you're applying for. There's going to be a periodic grant cycle, and that's going to be reviewed by an internal committee at the company as a general rule. It's worthwhile trying to find out what that cycle is, as you would with a trust application process, and try and put in your applications at a convenient time to meet those meetings. You're going to probably have to deliver answers to fixed questions. There's going to be a word limit, so very similar to what we were talking about yesterday. And those questions are going to include things like a budget, but there also will be some questions that are specifically tied to kind of compliance to professional codes that might matter to that company. So the thing to think about here is with pharma companies, they'll generally have questions in there that are tied to the ABPI code. That's the Association of British Pharmaceutical Industry. So asking things to confirm that if they're engaging with you, they're not going to get undue promotion of specific drugs, for example, that they know how they're interacting with medical professionals and how they're interacting with patients to make sure they're fully compliant on that code, and that's going to be very important. So it's worth maybe familiarizing yourself with some of the key terms when looking at that type of approach. One thing we found with corporate grants, particularly on larger companies and the more structured things, is that the process can change midway through the application, which can be really frustrating, and the people can change midway through as well. So relationships you've built might suddenly disappear, and that's just a nature of the corporate and pharmaceutical beast, actually. But it can slow the application, so be prepared for that. Make sure if you send off an application, you've got that it saved somewhere, you've got your own copy, know when it was sent, know when you should hear back, know who you should connect to and how to chase it, and don't be afraid to chase it, because this is most important to you, and it's only going to be you that's really going to chase it up properly, and these companies can sit on things sometimes. We've had a few instances where grants have gone on for over a year and just not been reviewed, which can be frustrating. So do chase up as you would any kind of application here. When we're talking about direct grant approaches, it's going to be approaching an individual generally, probably via email, but if you can get phone numbers and have conversations, all the better. If you're looking for people to contact in companies, you want to look at potentially in pharma or life sciences, patient-facing individuals, people who are tied to how the company works with patient groups, people who are looking to interact on the CSR schemes, the corporate social responsibility of the organization, or people who are involved in marketing and promotion of the company, particularly if you're looking at sponsorship approaches. And LinkedIn is always a great resource to try and identify people in this area, as well as other people in your networks. When it's direct, you don't quite know what's going on behind the scenes. There could be a formal grant process with a grant review board or a small group of people who meet at a certain frequency, or it could just be a single person who's in charge of that type of process within the organization, and they have a specific budget that they control over a period of time. Bear in mind that they will have a budget, and this will be set by the company, and this budget will be relatively small compared to the millions or even billions that the company might be turning over. CSR budgets tend to be rather small compared to what you might be thinking, so don't expect vast sums even if it is a big company necessarily. When you're making the approach, at some point you're going to put in a paper application, give them something written that they can see and look at, and think about some of the things we talked about yesterday. You want to give a clear, concise summary of your organization, of the project, and what you're asking for. The same basic rules are going to apply here that we'd always use. What we always try and do when we're doing grant approaches in this manner is try and get all the key points onto a single page. So part of your application is a one-page summary that goes through the major steps, which includes that summary, some evidence of need, maybe a personal story, and the ask within it. We may have a few additional pages after that. We want whoever's looking at this to look at one page and get it quickly. simply because they might be inundated with applications and they're not going to spend a lot of time on your application if they don't have to. So make it as easy for them as possible. Fundamentally, though, with this approach, you have a chance to build a relationship. So if you are able to interact with people, whether by email or by phone, do talk to them, find out what they're looking for, find out what ticks those boxes for that organization, find out what their story is, because that will help. If you're doing this, though, do make sure you don't fall into the trap of trying to deliver their project. Deliver your project always. You are the people who know what the need is. You're the people who know what the community is looking for. So don't over-tailor your applications to deliver the corporate's aims. It wants to make sure you're delivering your own. And always bear that in mind in these kind of approaches. So, my things to remember when looking at corporate grants. Unfortunately, timelines aren't necessarily any shorter than other grants, though they can be much shorter, particularly when you're working for a somewhat smaller company. Be aware that these job roles do change within companies, and the grant schemes can change as well, so you have to build and factor that into your application process. Many companies are going to look to provide financial support to the disease areas they work in, so if you find that overlap, particularly on the pharma side of things, this is great for you, and you should definitely be trying to put applications in. If you're applying to companies that don't necessarily work in your area, try and give them a nice, easy reason why they should support you, which either decides their broader aims from a social perspective or the work they're doing as well. Make it clear why they should bother. And when you're doing grant applications, don't include benefits to the company as a default position. Generally, in grant applications, they want to see that they're helping you deliver a project. They're not looking, or shouldn't generally be looking, for benefits to an organization as a default place. And we've had instances in the past where we've included very minor things that we'd consider just what we do to thank people that have been seen as benefits and meant that the grant couldn't go forward. So it's better not to have them in up front. And if they're then asking for them or want to discuss them, move forward and add them in. But it's a grant, you're asking them to help you, and they're associating themselves with you, and that's the benefit they're looking for. Okay, in our other two buckets, we've got active engagement and sponsorship. And in both of these cases, there is some more formal benefit, essentially, to the organisation beyond just reputational. So you need to work out what that is and make sure you can deliver it in the support when you're asking for support. Whenever you're looking at active engagement, you're kind of looking at a partnership with a company. So you always want to make sure you're putting together a kind of an agreement on how that's going to work and interact and what you're both going to gain from that interaction. Make that really clear up front when you're applying or when you're talking to the group, because that's going to make everything run more smoothly down the line and make sure expectations are on the same page. The benefits themselves are less obvious or tangible than, say, for sponsorship, but generally it's about giving the staff or the company opportunities to contribute to the society or to your cause, and to help the company build a more positive working environment for their staff. And it's going to be tied to an aim to advance that big social cause that they're interested in. And that's a really positive thing. And as I've mentioned already, that's becoming more common in some of the criteria for company grants or themes they want to fund as well. So be aware what those are. And in all of these cases, your value is really big to that company to allow them to do this, to meet that social change. You as an organization is a vehicle to let them do that and to help them engage with it and see tangible benefits. So know that you're valuable in that and they need you to help achieve those goals, and be confident in that interaction because of it. Sponsorship is quite different. It's always best to view it as quite a transactional interaction. So it's business agreements and you're targeting marketing budgets by default. The benefits should allow the company to promote itself to whoever they're looking to speak to, and knowing what audience they want to speak to is key. Make sure they know who's in the audience for your events, because some sponsors might be cautious about speaking to certain parts of your audience, whether those be clinicians or patients, and make sure any benefits that you're looking to offer in a sponsorship arrangement really speak to who they want to speak to, which may be to the patients themselves, it might be to other companies in the area, it might be to clinicians. So on a sponsorship package, we tend to build something that looks a bit like this. It's best used generally to raise funds for an event. You know, it might be a conference, gala dinner, fundraising events, educational meetings. You can basically allow that company to tie their name to that event, and it can raise awareness about the company and bring you some funds to help deliver it. What we found is lots of companies are very used to this type of format, giving specific sponsorship packages, often with these gold, silver, bronze type labels to reflect the different size and amount of benefits that go with it. And that increasing scale will correspond to increasing levels of funding to support it. In all cases, we're trying to offer benefits that are going to help the company raise its profile. And at Findacure events, we're trying basically to help them raise their profile to the rare disease world in general. And that will be speaking somewhat to patient organizations, but as much to other companies they could do business with, and clinicians and researchers who might be in the area. It's trying to help that company build collaborations and show their precedence within the rare disease community. So opportunities and sponsorships vary a lot. We generally have more exclusive opportunities at higher value. So a platinum, for example, package will only be available to one individual. And we try and build in increasing benefits to that package. So increasingly large summaries of the company, more precedence of logos, more precedence of the company at the event. So a gold or platinum sponsor here, for example, would get an exhibition stand as part of an event, whereas if you're just a bronze sponsor, it might just be a logo and a summary of your company's information at our event. And this is an example of our conference from a couple of years back. Allowing companies to speak and share messages is also something that can be quite enticing to those companies as well, and that is something we only really give away at the very highest packages. And with each of these packages, there'll be a certain value that we tie to it, and companies will sign a contract to agree to access the benefits in that package for the price that we set. You want to scale those prices based on the costs of your project. So if you've done a good budget, you'll know what you need to raise, and you have an estimate of how you think you're going to divvy that out between the different packages. And that's the approach we use, and is quite successful in sponsorship. The key thing then obviously is getting these sponsorship packages produced and out nice and early to help you bring in the money for the events. And if you have any detailed questions on sponsorship packages, Mary Rose is the queen of them at this point, and we'll be more than happy to have a chat with you about it, I'm sure. Always remember though, when you're building the packages, the benefits need to meet the company's need. That's the point with those packages. So you need to think of benefits that are going to help that company do what they want to do. So with sponsorship, always ensure you've got a sponsorship agreement in place between your charity and the event sponsor. And that's going to be in your realm to put that together because you're offering the sponsorship itself. So think about the key terms that you're going to work on and what benefits you're offering and what they're doing to receive them. And those are the things to outline there. Also be aware that companies may require certain changes to those benefits, and you need to make sure you know what you've offered and what you've agreed to early on to keep a good record of that. One thing we've seen a lot is certain companies have issues around social media use and how freely you can talk about them on social media, and in what way you can talk about them. They might need approvals or might not want to be talked about in social media. So make sure you build that in and are aware of that early on. Similarly, certain companies won't want their budget put towards travel for clinicians or potentially advertising, or alcohol for a drinks reception, for example. Your sponsorship is a business arrangement. It's worth seeing it like that. Assume it's going to count towards your VAT allowance as an organisation, which is roughly £80,000. When you exceed that amount of money raised through this kind of approach, you're going to have to be VAT registered. So bear that in mind. Although for many organisations that we're talking to here, that probably won't be a threshold you're near at the moment. Same thing with sponsorship as you do with any funding agreement. Report back to sponsors after the event. Let them know how it went. Let them know how their benefits are delivered, tell them how many people they reached, show them that you did what you said, show them it was good, and hopefully that will entice them to come back and repeat sponsorship for that event if you run it again. And the key thing, I suppose, is because this is more of a transactional relationship, because you're offering a package and they're buying that package, you don't have to just look for the costs of the event. You can use that sponsorship beyond that event if you wish to. If you've covered it and exceeded it, it's possible. You've got to do the work to fundraise it, and it can be hard in itself, but you have some flexibility with the delivery and the use of the funding once it's been paid for. Okay, active engagement. This is all about a company looking to engage with a project. They want to actually be hands-on. They want to give the staff opportunities to use their skills to benefit your charity. They want to do that to build an ethical company with social impact. They want to have a chance for employees to see the difference that their work can make, strengthen their team, a chance for employees to learn new skills as well. And projects can come in lots of forms, pro bono support being one that is a really good place to start with a lot of companies and can do a lot of good for you. But they also might fund and deliver a discrete project for you or run fundraising events on your behalf. Here's a little example from a pharma company, which is unusual, Sobi. So their team gave them feedback in the UK that they wanted to do something that actively engaged them in supporting charities. That actually meant they could see it on the ground rather than just knowing some money was going somewhere. So Sobi engaged with a charity called Well Child, their Helping Hands project. That basically means that Well Child get teams in from companies to come and help renovate a kid's bedroom or garden if that child's living with exceptional health needs. It's a simple, engaging project that people can come along and get involved with. Sobi provided over £2,000 to buy the materials to do that. They sent 15 people down to that house over a weekend and renovated a garden. It generated lots of positivity in the team, positive feedback for the company as well, and a positive impact on the beneficiaries. So it's a really nice packaged, engaged way to work with the company. Beneficiaries benefited, Well Child benefited, Sobi benefited. A key thing that I got from it though is that this quote that was given to me by Neil, I think, at Sobi, that it's great to make a difference to a few individuals rather than a small difference to many. And in this area, this is kind of how the people within the company are perceiving it. It's an opportunity for them to really engage and see the benefit and do a lot for people that wouldn't otherwise get it. And there's something in this quote which I think we should think about as small rare disease patient organisations. A few £1,000s given to us can make a huge difference to that organisation, whereas a few £1,000s given to Cancer Research UK kind of just gets absorbed into a massive entity. So can we make the most of this idea to find ways to increase that engagement with some of the companies we want to work with? When you're looking to build corporate partnerships, I think that's one thing to consider, because we have to get through the door and find a way to compete against the likes of CRUK, Macmillan, and the really big entities that everyone likes to try and support. To do that, success is going to depend on making the most of those personal contacts. The more you can develop those contacts, the better. And trying to make the most for the passion that you have for the cause within yourselves and within your community. Really don't be afraid to start small. Corporate relationships really can build up over time. And if you can get that kind of engaged interaction, it can really grow in ways you don't expect. But do try and be realistic in your targets. Don't spend days and days writing a detailed grant application or application to be charity of the year for a massive international company if no one in that company's ever heard of you, because the odds are you're probably just wasting time and you're going to struggle to compete with some of the bigger ones. So target places where your investment in time is really going to give you a chance of success. But do be ready to make up the most of new opportunities that come across you, particularly through those personal connections. I'm really conscious of time. I don't want to go too much longer. I want to be within half an hour, so I'll just try and wrap up shortly. This is just an example of something that a small rare disease charity, Wolfram Syndrome UK, have done a few years back now in corporate fundraising. They've developed things a lot through those personal relationships. So the brother-in-law of the founder runs a company, and that company basically provides sponsorship for their annual conference, which comes to about £5,000 each year, which is a really significant contribution that helps them deliver need. He also sponsors the golf fundraiser. Through that sponsorship, he invited his insurance broker to attend one year, and they entered the golf team. That raised money through that business connection. But because they heard a talk from Wolfram Syndrome UK at that event, they bought into the charity, bought into the cause, and decided to sponsor the whole event themselves down the year. So that naturally developed through the connections that they had and brought even more money into the charity. They then rolled that out on the idea to allow more companies to sponsor the greens for the fundraiser itself. And in return, they just offer some basic visibility to the company through the Wolfram Syndrome UK newsletter. And they work with other local businesses who provide pro bono support to help organise a fundraising event, an 80s night, for example. These are small ways to start, but they can always increase your fundraising down the line. And this can scale quite quickly. So I know of an example where a larger charity, one of their beneficiaries was reasonably I think worked for a large department store. They got them a meeting with that department store and got them a large multi-thousand-pound a year agreement to be charity of the year for that department store. So you never know how these connections can unlock opportunities for you. For time reasons, I'm going to hop over this, but suffice to say, we've worked quite a lot with companies and corporates at Findacure and developed lots of different relationships that have often been ongoing, and generally those where there is duration are down to having really good personal relationships and working through different ways that we can engage with companies, looking at pro bono support and finding ways to roll that into further grant support or community fundraising for those companies. And Charlene is going to start speaking very shortly, is at Illumina, and that's a relationship we've just been developing and hopefully is going to continue to go in lots of different ways. So in summary, over time, really sorry. It's not always easy to win your corporate support, but there's lots of different avenues to explore, and they can really yield some significant funding support for your work, or actually do some work for you, which often will be far more expensive for you to get done. Target companies in your effort wisely and try and match the right type of funding approach to the project. So use sponsorship at the right time, use grant support at the right time. Really make the most of personal connections and those of your supporters, because it's opening those doors to conversations that are going to give you the best chance at the size of charity that we're operating. Try and be professional in your approaches, but do remember that personal connection and interaction is key, and you're interacting with people at the end of the day. So there's no need to be scared of these companies. They are going to be impressed by the work that you're doing and the cause that you're championing, as much as you are impressed by their big shiny office with the fancy coffee tap. Building a personal connection to the cause really is the best way to secure support. Recognize your value, because you do bring value to that relationship, and don't be afraid to say how you can help them do what they want to do, whether that's just raising their profile, whether that is helping them achieve their social aims. And just remember that corporate funding isn't always the most sustainable. It can be for shorter hits or shorter periods, but if you can build relationships with companies, then it can build that sustainability that the organization needs, so it has great potential.